Alabama's game against USF. Now, if you didn't catch that game and you just saw the box score, you saw Alabama take down USF 42-16. You'd say, okay, well, that was just another, joyless murder ball from Alabama. Alabama was doing Alabama things. But if you watch that game, you would realize that that final score is not indicative of how that game went at all. It came down to the wire through three quarters, and Alabama just happened to score on every single possession of the fourth quarter and really ran away with it late. But Adam and Fitz, we went into this season, we had so many questions about what this Alabama team is. What is life after Nick Saban? What does this Kalen DeBoer brand of Alabama football look like? Through 2 weeks and through three quarters against USF that Alabama didn't look so great. Frankly, Adam, I don't think I know what Alabama is quite yet.
I think Alabama is still the team I thought they were when the season started. And we were on here first couple of shows, and I was talking about I think Alabama will make a run at the SEC championship. I believe in Alabama. I believe in Kalen DeBoer. I'll say I was shocked at how Alabama struggled in that game through the first three quarters. But in the fourth quarter, they looked like the Alabama program that we expect them to look like. 21 unanswered points in the final 5 minutes of that game. But the challenges to me really came down to Alabama had their left tackle and right tackle out for the game. So their O-line did not play well. And it shows you how thin they are at offensive line. They got manhandled by USF in the first couple quarters. We saw penalties, mistakes by Alabama, things that you're not used to seeing. But if Alabama can stay healthy this season, I believe they'll make a run at this thing and be exactly the team that I thought they'd be in the beginning of the year. The other part of this is anytime you have a new coach, the first moment that your team faces some adversity is really a telling moment for how the season is going to go and what kind of program you're going to be under that new coach. I remember playing for some new coaches myself, and it's easy when everything's going well. Everyone loves the new coach. The culture is great. Everyone loves each other. But the moment that things don't go well, how does everyone respond, and how do they respond when they look at their head coach? For the last long time at Alabama, when things didn't go well, every single player on that sideline looked at Nick Saban, and it felt pretty good. Oh, we're going to be okay. We got Nick Saban, the GOAT. Now you look at the sideline and you're looking at Kalen DeBoer and new coaches, and they don't know the coaches that well. And the fact that they responded the way they did and turned it on and didn't just find a way to win the game, absolutely took control in the fourth quarter and dominated it, makes me feel good about Kalen DeBoer, how the players feel about him. Because it's easy in those moments to start pointing fingers and saying, well, guess we're not going to be good anymore. Nick Saban's gone. I think those players rallied together, and Alabama is still Alabama. I think Alabama will be a playoff contender, make a run at the SEC championship. And I still believe in this team. To me, also the other true story of this is let's give credit to South Florida and the program they are and what Alex Golesh has built. I mean, I think Alex Golesh we'll be talking about Alex Golesh, USF head coach, because he'll have one of the biggest jobs in college football next year or the year after, and he'll be taking a big time program to play Alabama in the playoff at some point. I mean, check out the Florida job possibly for Alex Golesh, but credit to them. They gave Alabama a run for their money, but they were still the Alabama team that I expected them to be.
So the funny thing is, you and I are going to say almost the exact same thing with a much different meaning. Because as you know, I thought coming into this looked to me more like an Alabama team that will take a little bit of a step back. There'll be an adjustment. It's a 3 or 4 loss team to me. Everything I saw speaks to why I feel the way I feel about Alabama. Because what you just mentioned, yeah, they're missing some offensive linemen, but let's be real. We're used to just a massive amount of depth in Alabama. And I watched that back and I thought, man, this shows you that the depth isn't quite where it was for a long time for Alabama, which is okay. It's just a transition period. And you watch that offense for the first 3 quarters and you think, man, they don't really have a grasp of what they're trying to execute yet, which is okay because it's a transition period. Like, I hear you on saying it didn't change your expectation for Alabama. It just also didn't change my expectation for kind of an up and down rough season, because I think Kalen DeBoer's offense is going to take a minute. I don't think they've got a good grasp on it yet. He had a benefit of guys that were executing that offense that played a lot of college football at Washington. They were able to get it figured out quickly with a quarterback that was really familiar with this system. Jalen Milroe is not that. So the whole thing just felt a little off kilter to me, which again, that doesn't mean the sky's falling. That's kind of what I expected for Alabama. So I hear you, it didn't change your expectations. Didn't change mine either. I can't watch that Alabama team and think that it is anywhere near competitive with what we've seen from teams like Texas so far. And that's a different version of Alabama. If you're not competitive with the best of the best in the SEC, that's not the same Alabama.
And I think there's a fair argument to make that throughout this season, Alabama can become that team that can be competitive with the Georgias and the Texases and the Ohio States of the world. I mean, Adam, you know better than anyone, when you have a coaching change, you're going to have hiccups. You're going to have bumps along the road when you're still learning what your team is and what the culture is. But here's the thing that would cause concern for me if I was an Alabama fan. In the fourth quarter, a few minutes into the fourth quarter, Alabama made a change at right tackle. The offensive line, as you alluded to, Adam, it was brutal. Penalties, they got beat on several snaps. They made a change at right tackle, and that's really when things started to shift. I mean, the offense started going off without a hitch once they made that change. Did that momentum happen because they made a change at right tackle? Or did that momentum change because they just out-physicaled, out-toughed, and just, outmanned South Florida late in the game, in the fourth quarter? At that point, was that defensive line or that South Florida defense just gassed? What happens when Alabama plays a team that they're not going to out-physical, that they're not going to out-tough, that they're not going to out-condition? They play Georgia in just a few weeks. You're not going to out-tough that Georgia defensive line. So that's when I think we are really going to get an answer for if this offensive line really can improve to an extent where Alabama can be competitive with some of the richest of the rich in college football. Because what we saw on Saturday against South Florida was concerning, because against South Florida, you should be absolutely mauling these guys. Alabama should have a roster full of guys that can, position 1A, B, C, and D, be able to go one-on-one with a South Florida player and win those battles handedly.
When it comes to the coaching change part, Caroline, that you just mentioned, I think that it takes time to truly understand what expectations are, how you're going to operate as a system. I mean, you look at just Nick Sheridan, their offensive coordinator at Alabama. Like, for him to have that the connection with Jalen Milroe and to understand what's going to happen on a week by week basis. 1 week is not enough to get through that, especially the kind of teams that these teams are playing in week one. That you kind of need to go through some stuff to understand completely how you're going to operate as an offense on game day. And I think we've seen Alabama now go through that. And Fitz, to what you said, I think I'm with you. I think we're still back to the same thing we said in the beginning of the season, is that I think Alabama is going to be a great team and have a chance to win the SEC. I think you don't think they are. And this is my take on these early games is I don't put too much stock in them. So I still feel the same way I feel about Alabama. And the reason that it's not alarming me is because they found a way at the end of that game to absolutely dominate every part of the game. It wasn't close. Yes, it was close for the first few quarters, but it wasn't close in the final score because they turned it on in the last 6, 7, 8 minutes of that game and scored on some explosive plays, 21 unanswered. That's the reason I said, okay, that's the Alabama that can win the SEC. Yes, a lot of pieces have to fall into place, but I still see the path to how it happens, and I know it takes time when you have a new coach, and I know for a fact proof is in the pudding that Kalen DeBoer wins football games, players want to play for him, and he builds cultures. And Alabama is still Alabama. Kalen DeBoer is going to get the job done.
I don't disagree.
Take a shot, by the way,
with the fact that they're going to be able to get.
Did I say culture?
Yeah.
Did I say culture?
You did.
Let's go.
Come on.
Everyone take a sip.
I don't disagree that Alabama's going to get better. But let me just, I feel like I'm putting on my anti-Alabama hat, and it's not that at all, y'all. Because I really don't care who wins or loses in college football. I just want chaos. But to me, the concept that Alabama gets better is fine. Do I not also believe that Texas is going to continue to get better week in and week out? Do I not believe that Georgia, who, by the way, is replacing some guys that are playing in the league now, doesn't look like they have any issue with it? Like, Georgia's going to keep getting better. Tennessee's going to keep getting better. Ohio State's going to keep getting better. Like, everybody's going to keep getting better. So I understand that there's going to be this moment where it clicks and all of a sudden they take a big step forward. I just wonder if that step forward is going to be enough in this year's environment of the college football playoff.